Hi there, this is Robert for atot.com, and today we're gonna go deeper into the art of making something react to music. And let's show you the preview.
Your bite's not quite better than your bark. You look much better in the dark. Well, I hate to see a grown man cry. It's time to. But you should have thought of that before you lied. It's time to. So reminisce and kiss this ass goodbye.
Right, it's a pretty simple effect, and let's start the tutorial. First, you're going to create a new composition. Use ntsc d1 widescreen square pixel, and duration 30 seconds should do. Hit OK. Now let me rearrange this stuff so we can see better. Now add your audio to the composition and apply an effect to it. This effect is called bass and treble. Here it is. Set the bass to -100 and the treble to 75. Right click on your layer, keyframe assistant, convert audio to keyframes. You'll get 3 channels. We're gonna delete the left and the right channel and use only both channels. And it started to rain outside, but no worries, we're gonna keep pushing on. Rename this audio amplitude layer bass. Actually, that's treble because the treble was pumped up and the bass was -100. Now select your audio layer again and flip the values. Go to 75 bass and -100 treble and repeat the process. Right click, keyframe assistant, convert audio to keyframes. Delete the left and right channel, and you'll have only both channels left. My god, it's raining outside. But no worries, we're gonna keep doing this. Right, so now we have a bass layer and a treble layer. And you can delete the bass and treble effect from your audio. Now, let's create 2 new composition. Actually, just one. Composition, new composition, and name it bass. Same settings, hit OK, and copy the bass audio effect, the bass audio keyframes, and paste it here. Click here where you see source name to bring back the layer name of that layer. Select the base layer, hit U, and look at the tons of keyframes we have here. Awesome. Let's set up our particle system. Go to layer, new, null, make it 3D. If you don't have these switches, just press F4 and you'll have them. Now create 2 new lights, layer, new, light. Let's make it a red, bright red color. Actually, that's good. Okay. Change the light name to emitter 1. And now let's duplicate the layer and change the light color. To duplicate, just press Ctrl D. Go to layer, light settings, and let's make this one a bit more orangey. That looks fine. Now select both the emitters and parent them to the null. While selected, press P and zero out the coordinates. Right, that's awesome, perfect. Now for emitter 2, set the value of -50 and emitter 1 positive 50. That way they will be equally spaced from the null. Right, now let's make this null move. Select the null, press R. Now in the X rotation, alt click on the stopwatch so we can write an expression and type wiggle. open parentheses 2 comma 250. This means 2 times a second, variate the value of the X rotation by a factor of 250, 250 being maximum. That looks great. Now the Y rotation, let's alt click on the stopwatch and pick whip the X rotation, so we have the same rotation in the Y axis as also, and that should do it with the rotations. Now let's set up our particle system. Go to layer, new, solid, make it black, make sure to make it comp size and name it particular. Now drop it to the end of the stack and shut off the base layer so we don't see it in the viewport. Now let's apply particular to it. Particular, there it is. And let's set it up. Go to emitter and change the emitter type to lights and set the velocity to 0. Perfect. Now let's go to the particle, life 0.3 seconds, size about 4, size random 100, opacity 100, opacity random 100, set color light from emitter, and we shall get these nice particles. And set the transform mode to add, and let's reduce the opacity a bit. Maybe actually leave it to 100. That looks pretty good. Right, going down to the physics system, air, turbulence field, and let's affect the size by a factor of 20 and the position as also 20. Right, now we are going back to the emitter settings and alt click in the particles per second. Now leave it that way, bring up the keyframes of the base layer, just select the layer and press U. Now select the particular layer and press U also, and let's pick whip the slider, the base slider, and multiply this by a factor of 100. That means we will get much more particles as you see here, and that looks pretty good. I'm actually gonna turn up the particle size a bit because they seem a bit too small. That looks better, and also bring the opacity down a bit. Actually 50 looks pretty good. Now moving on, go to the emitter settings again and alt click on velocity from motion and pick whip the same slider, but this time multiply it by 5. This should work also. Let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. Let's do a quick RAM preview. I'm going to pause the video because this usually takes a long time, and we'll see you in a bit. Right, we're back. As you can see, it's still rendering a bit, so I'm gonna stop it and let's see what we have. Alright, that looks pretty darn good. We don't have any audio because I forgot to copy the audio layer. My bad. I'm gonna copy it and paste it here. And let's preview this again. I'm seeing a bit of a delay. That's because the birth rate is taking a while to react to produce the particles, and that can be solved just by moving the audio layer a bit forward. Let's see what that made. Right, that's pretty much it with the bass layer. Let's do the treble layer. Create a new composition, name it treble, same settings, and go into the bass comp and copy everything. Copy and paste them there. We will get a bunch of errors, but no problem. We will fix them in a jiffy. Select the bass layer and delete it. Go to comp 1 and copy your treble layer into the treble comp, like so. Now into the particular setting, select it and press U. Also select the treble layer and press U. Shut it off. Let's make some more room here. And let's pick whip the treble slider. Multiply it by 100. And the velocity from motion slider for the treble. Now in this velocity for motion, let's multiply them by a factor of 20, because we want a bit more variation here. And also let's multiply the particles a second by 200. Actually 400. So now we get a lot more particles, a lot more time to render. Let's change the colors of these particles by changing the colors of the lights or the emitters. Select emitter 1 and press Ctrl Shift Y, and let's make it the dark blue color, or bright blue. That's okay. Now go to the second emitter and go to layer light settings or Ctrl Shift Y, and let's set it to a tealish color. That's just okay. Now this is starting to look pretty good. Go back to the base and in the particular settings press U and multiply this by 200, so we get more particles, more dramatic effect, and increased render time. But this should look pretty darn well. Now, perfect. Let's create a new composition. Name it Final. Add the bass and the treble comp. Shut the audio off for both. And copy an audio from any of the bass or the treble file. We just need to position the sound right. And I'm gonna pause it again and see a final preview. Let's see how this looks. And we're back. I'm going to stop the render because it's taking a while, and let's see how this looks. It looks pretty good, but I think we can make it look a little more better. Go into the treble comp and select your null, hit U, and Shift R, and let's add a Z rotation to this and pick whip the X rotation. So now this should go in all different directions. Should look pretty good. Also, in both particle system, let's modify the life the size over life settings. There it is. And let's select this preset. That looks better. Now turn motion blur on for both of them. Let's do the same settings on the treble. Motion blur. That looks great. And now here hit F4 to toggle the switches, and for the base layer set both of them to add actually. And let's do a preview now. I'm gonna pause it again. Right, let's see how this looks. It's a bit too extreme. Maybe I'm going to lower the wiggle of this, but you can do whatever settings you like. This is with particle systems, it's always a challenge to do the same thing twice. They are pretty much random, and also the wiggles are random, and it's pretty difficult to redo that preview. But this looks pretty good, and we have only one more thing to do, and that's this beginning with the bass and the treble side by side. And yes, let's get to work on that. First, scale down both of your layers. 50% is good. Actually, let's go more, 25, and move them. One here and one over here. Don't double click on it. And let me pump up the scale a bit. 50%. Actually, that's pretty darn well. Again, don't double click on it. That looks pretty good. Now select the base layer and go to the rectangle tool and double click. You'll get a mask. Do the same thing for the other one. And now for both of the layers, add a stroke effect. Generate stroke for both of them. So now both of them should have a stroke, and it's pretty easier to position them with the stroke on. It's actually a lot easier to position them with the stroke effect on. Again, don't double click. That's just perfect. Do the same thing with the other one. There. Now they're perfectly level, I hope. Yep, just a bit off there, but that's not a problem. Now let's add a text. I'm using Segoe, or actually I don't know how to spell it. Call it base. Let's duplicate this and name it treble and move it down here, down here. And now what we are going to do is link them. Bass, link it to bass. Treble, link it to treble. And now when we scale back up the treble or the bass, the text will stay with it. Pretty good. Keep them to 50. Now let's add animation keyframes. This is the most important part of this. Now in the bass, hit P for position and Shift S for scale. Add keyframes, hold Shift down and hit page down a couple of times and add another keyframe. Do the same thing for the treble. P, Shift S, add the position, add keyframes. Now this is the most difficult part, scaling this back up and centering it. Now I figured out that if we click here and if you know the size of your composition, go to composition setting and copy this value, click here in the position, paste that value and divide it by 2. Perfect. Do the same thing for the other one, for the height. Paste it and divide it by 2. You get it perfectly centered. Do the same thing for the treble. You can just copy the position keyframes and scale 100. So now this should work pretty good. Whoops, something went wrong. Ah, yes, there's the problem. We have to reposition it again. Just make sure your keyframes they're not both selected. But you get the general idea. Right, that looks pretty good. They combine beautifully. Now let's fade the bass and the treble. Select both layers and hit O, actually T, sorry. Select both layers and hit T and add keyframes, shift page down and set the opacity to 0. So now when these guys move, the treble and bass fade. Perfect. Now let's add our fade. This is the last thing. Create a new solid, layer, new solid, name it fader, make it comp size and make sure it's black, hit OK. Now press T for the opacity, set a keyframe 100%, hold shift and press page down a couple of times, set the opacity to 0, go to the end of your composition holding down shift so it snaps to the end, add another keyframe and set the opacity to 100, hold Shift and press page up a couple of times and set the opacity to 0. Now this should fade beautifully, and it does. Now let's fade the audio also. Select your audio and add stereo mixer. Select your fader, press U so you can see the keyframes, and into stereo mixer set the keyframe for left and right level and set them to 0, both. Go forward and set them to 100. Go to the end, add a couple of keyframes and zero them out. And let's see one final preview. And this should be finished. Right, let's see how this came out. Looks pretty awesome. And that's just about it. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'd like to thank Andrew Kramer for his inspirational work from Video Copilot. This particular tutorial, audio to animation, this is where I learned how to extract the keyframe data from audio, and pretty nice tutorial. You should check it out, and hope you enjoy mine, hope you understand it, and I'm going to see you next time. This is Robert for aetouch.com signing out.